I wanted to make a video telling you what the first session looked like. Now, this isn't going to be a I track every session type deal. This is going to be just I tell you how this works so you get an idea of how a session might run. This is my first session of Mutant Year Zero, so although I have a semi-idea of how it runs because I've run Mechatron and I've run GenLab Alpha, but this is its own beast. Deciding on basically the setback for the theme of the session was interesting. Here we started with there being a distinct lack of water, so that became like a plot, and then I imposed that the players going out into the field won't count as having drank, so they're going to have to either drink actively from their supplies or, you know, drink from a source they find out there. So yeah, that's going on. That's the current narrative threat. And it was interesting because the whole session, and we played from, I don't know, what, 12:30 through till 6:30 or something like that. We played in the Ark itself, which is, you know, the one square in of itself. But then we explored, and all the exploration took into account 3 squares on the grid. 3. How about that? So that was interesting. They decided to try and plant some seeds and get like some cultivation going there, some farming, and that was interesting to sort of see them putting their back into it and working out there with how to interpret the skills required and how they're going to help out with the skills required. And you know, they went out into one square, searched it. It took its requisite amount of hours to search and stuff, and they, you know, determined, well, it's nearly dark, so we better actually go back to the Ark and not push on. So there's that consideration going on already. We don't want to be traveling in the dark. We've heard things, you know, we've heard stories. So that, you know, they go back to the Ark, and a bit of talking with NPCs that may be important to them and stuff. It's a little strange when you're playing an RPG that rewards XP for trying to risk something to help an NPC you care about, or mess with an NPC you don't really like that much, because it's sort of awkward for the players, especially when they haven't got a feel for the home as the Ark, to just like go around and do things with them NPCs themselves. So I think the GM needs to probably be a bit more active in putting those NPCs in the spotlight of what's going on, those designated chosen NPCs, so that they'll have a, you know, a fighting chance to get that XP as well. So, you know, it's tricky. It's a tricky one in that sense. So yeah, you know, it was a great bit of narrative, searching these. In this case, we're off the docks of Southampton, somewhere off up the coast from the main port of Southampton, and so there's all these cargo kind of containers and cranes and that lift stuff off from Southampton docks that come in, that, you know, populate and feed the rest of the UK with goods, and you know, the leftovers of all of that. So you can see why a square just in one section that's basically, you know, cargo containers all stacked, and then more next to each other and more next to each other like that, why it's going to take something like 4 hours to do. So it's a crazy old search. So they pushed on, yeah, and they managed to find like a scrap pile that had scrap crows at the top of it, and an artifact at the top of that, and they found a compass, and that was great. And this is when you know you're playing this sort of game, when they're scratching around us. Oh wow, I found a bullet, or you know, they find a compass, and that's a big thing. That's a big deal. Oh my god, I found a compass. That's brilliant. Figure out what an actual compass does, and And then they had the problem, of course, of whether to keep it or whether to hand it in to, power up the Ark. So they've decided to keep it because it can help the Stalker basically make the group find more stuff with the Find the Path skill, +2 to those rolls. That was a great find for them. And you don't want to give too many artifacts away, really, but they fell upon a special section because basically the players knew that the narrative was saying there's not enough water, and I predicted they'd figure this out, and they did. I gave them permission to use player meta knowledge if they want, because they're predominantly from Southampton and know the area. So they know the surroundings. I also encourage them to open up the satellite view map of the same spot so that we could, in a joint effort, describe what these squares look like with a little bit of interpretation for the present context of the setting, post-apocalyptic. So it's to be expected that there'll be kind of a bit of knowledge of, if we head that way, there's one of them here. And I gave them that permission because I said it's the rule of cool. So rather than just stumbling around blind and, they never get anywhere, gave them just a slight little bit of aid up, like, in a film, the characters happen to find the right way to go because it's interesting, it keeps the thing moving. It's the rule of cool. The players get to figure out the best thing. Plus, I can throw surprises at them that they never would have seen coming. Or, it's a bit ahead of where they currently are into the future. Because if you think, the time we're living in now is not the time of the apocalypse because there aren't robots and stuff around. So, it's happened somewhere forward ahead of that. I mean, the type of robots that exist, a la Mechatron, kind of level of robots. So other things could have been built, or things could have been knocked down or changed, removed, or anything could have happened, So I hold the right to provide surprises where I see fit. Yeah, that could be interesting. Just the act of doing that. So they went in they figured out, well, in Millbrook, there's a water treatment plant. Perfect. We'll head for it. And that was cool. So to me, that was cool. So they did head for it. So they came out of their arc 1 square, they went up 1 square, and then went to the left 1 square, and that's it. That's their 3 squares. That took them to the treatment plant. And of course, the treatment plant, that was the right time to drop on them the grid scenario thing, A Mouthful of Water, which is basically the bunch of ghouls have taken over a water treatment plant. They call themselves the Pure Ones. And led by Luttrell. They're like religious fanatics to the Deep One that lives in the water vats inside. And they got to go in and they got to explore the water treatment plant, and it worked out beautifully because the game wanted me to run a water treatment plant. There's one right there. So it all just makes sense narratively. It all fell into place. And they ran for their lives away from the water treatment plant, discovering, having met the Deep One, was a whole bunch of worms, a swarm of worms that just feed on people and get stronger from the act of that aforesaid feeding. And that was nice. One of the NPCs that they find there, the expedition that had gone missing, was eaten by the worms, and a couple of the boss's gang members were eaten. Well, in fact, he lost, what was it? He lost 2 or 3 or something like that. Yeah, 3. No, 2. He lost 2 members, and then there was an NPC that died. And then at the end of the session, I rolled an amount of people that died as well. And so I added it all together, because at the end of the session, an amount of people die, a d6 amount of people, minus whatever food modifier you've got happening. And the modifier was not in place. So they lost 7 people. It went from 212 down to 205 population of the Ark, because it's the roll at the end plus on-screen deaths. And the on-screen deaths problem is big, because what it means is a boss is all, it's all very well then bringing out, you know, a whole army of NPCs that they can just drop on the wasteland. But if they do that, they're risking population loss. So, you know, the danger's there. They managed to kill Luttrell, throw him off the edge into the vat, so all the worms will swarm him and eat him and turn the water red. But they didn't get the water, they didn't get away with the water. I mean, they found a lot of water prior to that anyway, so and goodies. But it's not enough to save the Ark from its threat at the moment. And you know, they ran all the way back trying to beat the dark, basically, running through the areas to get back to the Ark. And they don't know if they were followed or pursued or what happened. But the fact in place now is that the ghouls, you know, technically, theoretically, they lost about 11 of their out of their 50 that they had. So there's maybe another 39 of them holed up in there, the zone ghouls. And, you know, they're going to get back to the Ark, and the session basically ended. And so the questions, the next sessions, it's all going to be about what do we do about the zone ghouls. We've identified the water. The zone ghouls are all over it. Were the party followed home? Will the zone ghouls do something to the party preemptively? You know, is the Ark safe now? Is it under observation? The concern was, well, you know, these zone ghouls are too close to the Ark for comfort, you know. We can't be leaving them there like that. We have to do something. And so there are rules for like a military wide-scale engagement of 2 forces. So if the Ark were to be attacked, or you know, vice versa, if an Ark expedition went to attack them, then we'd be able to work something out. And so I suppose the next session, the beginning of it, will start with a debate between the bosses and the party about what the hell to do, who's to blame, and what the course of action for the Ark should be. So we'll get to figure that out. You know, do they attack the water treatment plant? Do they ignore it and hope nothing comes of it? Who knows what they're going to do? So yeah, 1 session down, and that's kind of how it ran. And everyone had a good time, and it worked, I think. Yeah. Until next time, I'll see you at the table.